Um,
Okay.
so, ladies and gentlemen, right now we have with us a very cool horror author, Mr. Lee Thomas. Our relationship with Sinister Grin uh, is awesome because we get to talk to all you guys and your book Ash Street through them is a very successful story, very cool mashup of the serial killer and paranormal esque genres. But
Okay. Yep.
by all means, man, I mean we can start there, but there's gonna be I want to talk about like the Ashes of Wonderland. Uh, just a whole bunch of stuff. So congratulations to you, all your success. Take a look at some of your works.
Thanks.
Um, so first and foremost, since Sinister Grin does such a good job at setting these interviews up for us, let's talk a little bit about Ash Street.
All right.
Where did you get the inspiration for this, man?
It was actually started as sort of a short piece I was doing. I was just kind of fooling around with ideas of grief and loss, and then different pieces rolled into it, and there was the Karla Homolka case out of Canada, which is pretty much what I based the serial killers in the book on. And I with the paranormal research shows, I found those sometimes interesting, a lot of times hilarious. These things sort of hit at once. So once I tapped into the main character of Stewart, who's the police officer, the detective, who's the central figure in the book, everything else just sort of came together around him with the grief counseling he was going through, with the case he had investigated, and with the people that surround him.
It's funny that you mentioned the reality ghost hunter shows, the Ghost Adventure guys. Yeah, they're always what was that? And I challenge you to come out and blah blah blah, man. And
It's like this kind of great theater, and I don't know. I'm not convinced it's all phony, but the shows that are doing their best to disprove what's going on are the ones I find a little more interesting than the ones that are like, "I know you're here, spirit. Show yourself."
yeah, there's no doubt about the dramatization of the ghost shows for sure. Uh, it as a writer, man, because you've written so much of. Um, we got one of the guys on Periscope saying they dig your Shaun of the Dead shirt.
Oh, cool. Hey,
Um, but
if they look over, if I open my door and they look over, brilliant. I love those.
but it's your style, man. You take it to so many different subgenres of the theme of horror. Like,
Yeah.
do you have a particular favorite?
No, not really. I mean, growing up, I liked the more literary aspects of Peter Straub or Shirley Jackson, or a lot of the classics. But I also liked just the more raw approach of James Herbert. Stephen King's short stories back then were pretty raw, and Creepy magazine, anything like that. I liked it from the most garage band kind of rock all the way through high production stuff. Of course, using that as a metaphor for the horror. I draw from whatever I can. Honestly, I think people, when they get too trapped into a niche, it can get kind of dull.
Yeah.
So I like to mash genres, whether they're from within horror or noir, crime, whatever. If it works, it works.
Do you, as a horror fan, do you have one that you particularly enjoy more than other that when you're trying to get a creepy story that you read?
I mean, obviously, I have some favorites that I go back to, and that would be like Peter Straub's Ghost Story for novel construction and language. I think it's beautiful. Short stories, Clive Barker's Books of Blood. I mean, he covered so much ground in those stories. It's great stuff. It really is. So, I mean, if I have touchstones that I go back to frequently, it would be those, and probably Night Shift by Stephen King.
Yeah, Clyde Barker's Books and Blood, Books of Blood, I should say. Whenever you Google, there was like a time I Googled like top, 10 horror novels, just looking for something good to read. And I looked at like, I want to say 5 different lists, and Books of Blood was #1 on all 5 of them.
Yeah, that's not surprising. It really was revolutionary when it came out. There wasn't, as far as I knew, there was not a lot like it. It had the mythology behind it and just the fantastic writing. It was a very different beast, and I certainly understood why Stephen King would say this is the future of horror. It was a new tact. And
won the Bram Stoker Award.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about how what novel was it for that they gave it to you?
Sorry, we're interrupting.
No, it's all right.
That was for my first novel. It was called Stain, and that was another one where I was kind of trying to mash things up and do something a little different. When I was like 16, I spent a summer writing an incredibly bad werewolf novel, and put it away. I probably wrote 10 or 12 practice novels that I just wrote. I never thought about publishing. But after I'd sold some short stories and whatnot, I thought, well, maybe I'll try to get a novel published. And that struck me as the most commercially viable. But I was no longer interested in the werewolf angle on it. So the way I had approached it was more of a viral transmission of this serial killer entity that manipulates the host and takes advantage of the host's weaknesses and perversions and whatever else it could get its hands on to make the host go out and kill a bunch of people. Had a lot of fun with it. Came out from the small press. Got some really nice blurbs from people that I didn't know at the time that had read the book, like Tom Piccirilli, Jack Ketchum. They had read the book and sent me blurbs for it. I was surprised, and I thought it was great.
Do you, when you sit down and you write your novels, about how long does it take? Does it vary on the story, or?
Yeah,
I mean, I guess it obviously would, but
it depends on a number of issues. If there's an idea I've had kicking around in my head for years that I haven't had the time to sit down with it, something like that can come out very quickly. The Dust of Wonderland, the first draft of that, which was actually twice as long as the book I actually published, took about 3 weeks for a first draft because it had been in my head for so long and so much of it was absolutely clear that really it was just a matter of sitting down at the computer and making sure the coffee didn't run out. Other books like The German were pieced together over the course of a year or a year and a half because I had other writing obligations, other contracts that had to be fulfilled.
Mm-hmm.
So I would go back to it when I could and write scenes. And then when I had the time, I was able to, I actually put some thought into how all of it would fit together. And once I did that, I sat down and it moved pretty quickly, but it still took probably about 3 months, even though I had most of the material already written. It had to be restructured, the voice had to be refined throughout, and I had to take what were initially unrelated scenes and create a through line to make it all work.
Do you have one that if you had to pick like your top 3, do you have one that the 3 that would be your top 3
of my books?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, sure. That would probably be The Dust of Wonderland, The German, and my latest novel, Butcher's Road. All 3 of them do quite a bit of mashup as far as genres. I think the writing is probably stronger in those than just about anything else. I've got a couple of novellas, Parish Damned and Torn, that I think are very good. But I mean, as far as full-length, novel-length work, I think it would probably be Dust, The German, and Butcher's Road.
Talk about a little bit about The Dust, because I know on your, doing website and getting ready for this interview that you definitely have had a lot of success with, everything, but particularly, that was a title that I saw come up again and again and again. So talk a little bit about that novel.
Well, again, as I said, I wrote it in just kind of a fit of writing. Actually, about 10 years before I tried to get it published. It was another one that I just wrote, put away, because that's what I did. And when I went back to it, it struck me as this is actually, pretty good. There's a lot of stuff in here I can use, but it was incredibly long and it rambled. It went off in a number of different directions that weren't as terribly effective. And I saw that after coming back to it after so long. So I sat down and gave it a really thorough edit. Went through it several times until I had really found what the core story was. And the book was, again, pretty much cut in half. And I think it was the best move on my part. I think it's very tight. It moves relatively quickly. The reviews on it were good. The blurbs from my colleagues were excellent on that. And it went on to win the Lambda Literary Award for me. But the book itself was primarily about how certain people, especially gay men at that time, I'm dealing with a particular syndrome here, compartmentalize their lives. It's like, this is my work life, and it does not move into my personal life. And this was a formerly married character, does not move into my married life, does not move into my gay life. So everything has these compartments. And then the villain in that, who is basically switches genders every time it dies, it's there to show the damage that can be caused by this compartmentalization. How when you're focused on one small aspect of your life and you're pretty myopic about that aspect, the other aspects of your life can kind of get torn apart. So, yeah, I enjoyed it. I thought it was a good book, and a lot of people agreed. It was a good experience for me.